We're up here today up in Nassau County at the Connor Green Cemetery. Old picture pump there. It's been there as long as I can remember coming up here. But the Connor Green Cemetery has been here since about 1850. I'm not sure who the first ones buried here were. I'm sure it's some of Noah and Elizabeth's children. And they're the ones that own the property. Could have been some of James R. Green's or some of them's children maybe that passed away at a young age as an infant. But we've got a lot of people up here, a lot of cousins by the dozens up here buried. And the names go on and on. Johnsons, Crawfords, Tanners, you name it. A lot of them up here. Now, I've got 5 generations that's buried up here. The youngest generation is actually my first cousin once removed, Roy Green. Now, that's my mother's first cousin. He was born in 1962 and died in 2005. Died at a young age. Several stories about how he met his demise. One of them was he was murdered over some stuff, and the other was natural causes. But anyway, it's kind of a mystery. So I really don't know for sure exactly what happened with Roy, but he died at a young age. You'll see on his marker there, it's got 2 flags from racing. He liked to race. He and his daddy spent a lot of money on race cars, and he went around to a lot of the dirt tracks, one thing and another. They had a lot of fun doing it. He really enjoyed it. Now, his daddy was Cranford Green. Cranford Green was my great uncle. He was the youngest baby brother of my grandma Green Davidson. It was in the Eubank Cemetery video. He was married to Gertrude G. Green, who died in 2003. We called her Aunt Trudy. But Cranford was in World War II and was stationed in the Aleutians. Now, the Aleutians is up in Alaska. Now, if you can imagine a Florida boy being up in Alaska, you know he had to be one miserable person up there. Now, if you look real close, you'll see a pulpwood truck on his side of the stone there. Once again, we go back to that timber thing. But he saved up his money while he was in the military. Got back home, went to work for a man, probably one of the Keens, driving a pulpwood truck, and saved every dollar he could scrounge together. And he gave it to my grandmother to keep for him. They put the money in the bank. He gave it the money to her to keep for him. Well, she had the pocket of one of my grandpa's pants cut out, and she'd keep that money rolled up and put in that old pants pocket, and she'd keep it in what she called her bosom for safekeeping. And over them few years that she carried that money around, I don't know how much money she carried around in that pants pocket for years, but anyway, he took that money and bought his own pulpwood truck, went into business for himself, ended up buying, well, his daddy actually bought property over off of US 1, and he had a little car lot over there and little mechanicing business. And of course, with the mechanicing business, that's where the race car stuff coming in. They done all their own work on them cars. pretty good mechanic. In fact, I bought my first vehicle from Uncle Cranford. Now, middle brothers, J.D. Green, he was born in 1915, died in 1992. Now, he was the younger brother that was with my grandmother when they went out for ice cream with Babe Ruth back when they were youngins down in South Florida. His nickname was Buddy, but my grandma called him Monk, M-O-N-K. The reason she called him Monk was when they was kids playing, he used to jump around like a monkey. So she called him Monk, short for monkey. Now, their daddy was Jackson David Green. Jackson David Green, J.D. Green Sr., 1884 to 1952. Now, unfortunately, I never got to meet this man, but he's a hero to me in a lot of ways. My granddaddy always said I was a lot like my grandpa Jack. We had kind of the same personality, and there's a lot of stories behind Grandpa Jack. But he made several fortunes and give it away at different times. With the sawmilling or whatever, a man owed him some money when they was living over in Dinsmore. Well, the man couldn't pay him, so the man held the mortgage on, I don't know, 20 or 30 places over in Dinsmore over there. So he gave him the deeds for all these houses and said, you collect that money and that's how I'm going to pay you back. Well, Grandpa Jack, he said, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. He said, I'm not going to go to these people and tell them they owe me money. So anyway, he got with my granddaddy. They went around to all these people and he just signed the deeds back over to them. Now, if that ain't a kind heart, I don't know what to tell you. So money wasn't a thing for him. He just enjoyed life. Now, his wife was Agnes or Aggie Rowell. Now, our Grandma Aggie, she was born in 1891, died in 1946. She was another cutter, I'm going to tell you. She spoke her mind, and she didn't care one way or the other whether you were standing next to her or not. She wouldn't say something behind your back. She wouldn't say to your face. If she thought you was a SOB, you was an SOB, and she'd call you an SOB to your face. But there's a lot of stories in these people out here, and one day we'll go up to Traders Hill up there on the St. Mary's, and I'll have a storytelling about a lot of this. Maybe I'll take my mother and my uncle up there, and we can share a lot of the stories. I know my uncle's got one story in particular that he likes to tell about my grandma. And my mama, she knows all of them pretty much, or whatever. But anyway, they're buried up here closer in the newer part of the cemetery. The older part back here has the original homesteaders buried in it, Florida pioneers, if you will. Right through the woods over there's a place called Red Bluff, and that's where they used to go swimming back in the day. Across the river from it and just east of us a little bit is Traders Hill. Now, Traders Hill was the last navigable water on the St. Mary's that you could get a boat of any size up in. And they had a trading post, and it was the name Traders Hill. And that's where everybody went if they needed anything. There wasn't, you had to go to Hilliard or Callahan from here to get anything otherwise, and it was easier just to go over into Georgia. So anyway, my Grandpa Jack's daddy was Noah S. Green. He's born in 1855, died in 1923. He's another one, a dirt poor farmer. Now, they had a lot of land up here. They had a section of land, and that section of land was a mile wide and a mile long. 640 acres they had up here that went all the way down to the river. And they farmed quite a bit of it and had a lot of kids and raised them. He was married to Elizabeth Tanner Green, born 1859, died in 1939. Now, Grandma Elizabeth's sister, Polly Ann Tanner, she's buried over in Keene Cemetery beside her mother, Elizabeth Bradley, that's buried over there. Elizabeth and Polly's sister married one of the Keens over there, and he had a sawmill. And so they spent a lot of time over there, and that's where my great-great-grandma, my great-great-great-grandma is buried over there in Keene Cemetery. That would have made, now, Polly Ann married my granddaddy's daddy, James Forrest Davidson, which made my great father on one side and my great father on the other side first cousins with each other. Made my grandma and my grandpa second cousins. So, like I said, you married the people next door, or you went to church on Sunday, you met them at church, or they was right down the road somewhere. Now, down here, we've got James R. Green. Now, of course, you got the stars and the bars and the bonnie blue flag flying here. This is one of the stones here is government issue stone. He fought in the war between the states with the 10th Florida Infantry. You'll remember Jonathan Knight Roberts was also in the 10th Florida Infantry, where we went over to Dunn Creek Cemetery. Well, actually, he was in the 10th Florida Cavalry, and James R. was in the 10th Florida Infantry. Apparently, he liked to walk a lot. I call him the Daniel Boone of the family, because if there was any kind of conflict, any kind of way, he fought in the Second Seminole War, and any skirmish there was with Indians or Native Americans, whatever you want to call them. He was involved in it some kind of way. Back for the Second Seminole War, him and several of the men around in this area walked from here, which we're just north of Jacksonville. They marched over about 50 miles south of Lake City to join in the fight for the people over there that was fighting the Seminole Indians at the time. Now, James R. was married to Rhoda Honeycutt. She was born in 1831, died in 1860. Here again, local girl. Honeycutts were a decent sized family in this part of the country. Uh, I don't know a lot about Grandma Rhoda. There's just not a lot there for me to talk about because there's just nothing on her. Sometimes you hit that roadblock on somebody and it's kind of immovable. Hopefully one day I can get a little bit of information on her. Now, James R. brother was Richard N. Green. He was born in 1817, and I know when he passed away, it's just escaping me at this particular point in time. They actually moved for a little while and went over to Bradford County. Now, Richard and James R.'s Jesse T. Green Sr., their brother, their dad, uh, Daniel Green, they all went over to Bradford County. And actually, they're buried in over near Little River area. And they built the prison over there, and they're buried actually with Evergreen Cemetery right beside the prison over there. Of course, they're in unmarked graves. There's nothing over there to go see, unfortunately. I wish there was. I'd take a ride over there and look. But if I went over there, all I'd do is just be looking at a bunch of graves. Might do it anyway, just for the heck of it. Now, the Keene family, which we were just talking about, they owned a bunch of sawmills up in this area. The Greens were farmers. Most of the rest of the people up here were farmers. And like I say, there wasn't none of them rich. They just hoed a living out of the ground. Over here you got some of the Johnsons and the Lewises and the Kennedys. Now, all these here are aunts of mine. They're all brothers and sisters to my grandpa Jack. Real peaceful out here today. Armistice Day. Veterans Day, they call it now. There's a few flags flying out here today, not a whole bunch. Usually there's a lot more than this, but people just don't do the way they used to. People are getting to where they don't care anymore about anybody, but I try to remember all my kin folks as much as I can. Well, that about winds it up here today. Here again, a little trivia about Armistice Day. Like I say, they changed it to Veterans Day, but originally it was celebrated for the armistice that was signed from World War I. Now, ironically, the armistice was signed at 11/11/11/11 of 1918. The 11th minute of the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month. So anyway, we're going to wind this up today. I'm going to go actually from here I'm going over to my nephew's. He's actually got a grave in his front yard over there. He sent me some pictures. And so I done a little bit of research on it and come to find out that she's actually related to me on both sides of my family, the Davis side of the family and the Green side of the family. Ironically, I don't know how that come about, but anyway, we're going to go over there and take a look at that and probably do about a 5-minute video on that. Apparently, there was an old schoolhouse over there. There ain't nothing left of it, of course, but there was an old schoolhouse over there, and I guess maybe she was the school marm over there. And see what that looks like. Anyway, once again, I appreciate y'all looking at my videos. I'd appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. I do this for my own enjoyment, like I say. I just enjoy traveling around and doing things. But once again, I ask you to comment. And if you got somewhere that's close, y'all would like for me to go look at or whatever, we could doggone sure do it. So anyway, like I say, appreciate it. God bless you. Y'all have a good day now.